putting the Tiger back together, and we've rerouted our trip and pushed the date back to June 15th as our for sure departure time. That and more coming up on this episode of Utah ADV. Welcome back. I hope this episode finds you healthy and well and safe, and as restrictions start to lift and as you get back out on the road, I hope you taking precautions to do so safely in wearing all the gear all the time, and just making sure that those corners that you're hitting aren't full of gravel and that the cagers are a good distance away from you, as much as we can maybe allow for that as it goes. A couple things I want to cover in today's show. One is our reroute of our trip. We've decided not to go into Canada after all. Can't tell whether or not the borders are going to be open by the time that we leave. And the second thing is putting the Tiger back together. I want to talk about a couple things, some discoveries that we got into there. So the outline of the trip is pretty much the same. It's a big giant loop through the Pacific Northwest of the United States. We decided not to go into Canada. We're going to start our trip in Monterey, California, where my daughter lives, and we're going to go clockwise the other direction. So we're going to go up the coast. Here's the map. You can see what the map's going to do. And our departure time at this point is the 15th of June. I'm going to trailer both motorcycles from Salt Lake back out to Monterey. Hopefully find some long-term parking out there somewhere, and then we'll hit the road at that point. We're going to start off maybe with a little ride to Big Sur on the Pacific Coast Highway with Addie's husband, who can't get away because of his commitments and obligations to his military post, but we'll put in a short ride for that day. Tearing down the Tiger has been fascinating to go through and find what has remained intact on this. I did a full rebuild as far as pulling all the cowlings and all the panels off and inspecting all the frame and the triple clamp, the forks, everything going on, and everything is pretty intact, which is remarkable considering how this bike went in. And from everything that we could tell on this, it locked this way to the left side, the bike went down on the right side, and it went down so hard then it rolled over, and we could tell from the scraping on the brake fluid reservoir on top of the tank, and then on the tail as well, and then it went over to the other side and scraped everything. So there weren't any radiator cowlings, upper or lower, that weren't unscathed. Turn signal stocks, those kinds of things. Took out the windshield and the windshield brace, everything that held that on. It all broke away, doing I would imagine what it was designed to do. The Jivvy panniers also took quite a beating. The mounts, the pannier racks themselves kind of collapsed in on the bike. Again, I guess doing what they were engineered to do, but not so far that they were inoperable. Both panniers on both sides are still solid, and there's a dent or two that way, but they're still very usable, and we're going to continue to use those. I did replace the pannier rack, though, with a brand new Jivvy rack. And it's nice to have the panniers actually squared up on the bike. They've never been that way since I've owned the bike when I bought it 2 years ago, because it's been down a couple of times before I picked it up. And then I put it down, and then here we are. So it's nice to have that straightened out and looking better than it was, and a little bit more functional and secure. The tear down on the front of the bike, I took off the radiator cowlings, both upper and lower on both sides, since they both took some pretty heavy abrasions, deep gouges in the plastic fairings on those. And so I just sanded them out. I took a electric palm sander, and sanded them down until the gouges could no longer be seen. And then I sanded out the rest of the plastic on that. And then I shot them all with a plastic coat black, which matched perfectly into the black, the stock black of the rest of the plastic that's on the bike. Really happy with the turnout on this. You'd have to look pretty darn close to go through and see that this was not indeed a factory part that way. The turn signal stocks took quite a beating on the front. I lost the front right one almost altogether, and the one on the other side, on the left side, was damaged in a previous lay down with the bike. So I decided to go through and replace those. I found these aftermarket turn signals that are much smaller. They are a little bit more protected by the cowlings that way, and they put out more light, more lumens, if you will, than what the factory lights did. And I replaced the ones on the back of that as well. The handguards on this were made by SW Motec, and I can't find any replacement ones. They're all back ordered, and I doubt that I will find some new ones by the time we leave on the trip. So I sanded these down the best I could as well and shot them with a plastic coat, and I'm really happy with the result on those. Obviously it's not fully restored back, but that's okay. It's got a few battle scars on there to go through and tell some stories about where it's been. One part of this that's been pretty amazing is the abuse that this tank bag took, and you can see it's got a little bit of scar tissue on the back of it where the bike actually slid on this where it was mounted in place on the tank here. But as you can see, the mount's still functioning, the zipper still works just fine around the perimeter of the bag, and all of its contents were just fine after the bike had actually rolled around over the top of that and took a slide all the way through here. So, I haven't had that great of luck with Jivvy tank bags, but this one's a keeper. Still waiting for the fairing parts to come in as far as the low windshield on this is concerned and all the bracketing, and I'm hoping that makes it in time before we leave. We've got about 4 weeks from now before that happens, so fingers crossed that everything's going to come about. And that's it, really, for the restoration on the bike. With all the cowlings off and an inspection of the frame and the triple clamp, everything's intact. There's no evidence of any kind of misalignment or any kind of cracking, anything that way. I'm pretty impressed that this is one tough motorcycle, almost as tough as its rider. On the next UTADV, I'll get into the rider gear, not the motorcycle gear necessarily, from the helmet that I use and that Addie uses to our jackets and pants and boots, gloves, those types of things. We are an all the gear, all the time kind of rider that way, kind of family there. So, and obviously we've had a pretty recent testament as to how all this stuff works well. So please subscribe. I'd love to have you along for the ride. Another 3 weeks or so we'll be on the road and posting from there. In the interim, we've got a few things more to talk about here as far as the ride prep is concerned. So thanks for watching.